Hi, and thank you for joining me. And what I wanted to do today is show a little example of what's possible with the Google Apps Script Execution API. Um, what I want to show you today is a very small and simple command line tool for sending data from a console to a Google Doc. And the little project I have here is called toDoc, and you can see that it's a very simple file or a script that basically either opens a document, creates a document, and then writes data to it. And this has been published as an execution API that's found under the publish settings, deploy as API executable, and you create. It's been published, and there's it's. And the second step is to go to the developers console project, and you need to make sure that there's two things that need to happen. The first is you need to enable the Google App Script Execution API. You need to enable that by clicking on that. Mine's already enabled, so it says disable, but you would enable it here. And the second thing is to create a set of client credentials. You create the credentials by coming down here to credentials, create credentials, OAuth, and it's OAuth client IDs, and you'd be other. And you'd need both a client ID and a client secret. Those are both needed for the console application. Um, so the what I'm working off of is this my GitHub repo here. It's Spencer-Easton/toDoc, and it's all there. And the environment that we're going to be looking at today is Cloud9, which is c9.io. This is just like an online web-based IDE. Pretty nice. I like it. Um, so what I've already done, I've already gone in. I've already cloned the GitHub repo on this and the next thing I'm going to do is we're going to open up the little console application. The console application is written in a language called D, which is kind of like a upgraded fancy C. It's got a lot of new features, a lot of modern feel and look to the language, and you can find that at deetlang.org. This is where you can download the compiler for the console application from this example. So for example, if I wanted, let's open up that console. So that's what's source dealing toDoc.d. So here it is. If you're familiar with C++, this should look pretty familiar to you. It's a pretty standard C application. If you look at the execution API quick starts for the big popular languages, Node.js, Python, Ruby, they have client libraries that include the execution API in it. So a lot of the work has been done for you for things such as execution calls, token requests, and token refresh, because you have to be able to manage the OAuth tokens of the user. But for me, in this example, since there was no Google C library for the execution API, I had to handle that stuff myself, such as token request, token refresh, and all that stuff. And if you go through the code here, it'll give you an idea of how that's done. And also how to do the requests. For example, the request, since it's a REST API, for example, as you can see that it's just a basic HTTP request. So any language that has an HTTP request that can do HTTP fetching will work with the execution API. So that's why I can do it right here in D, since you have access to an HTTP service. Um, So for example, we'll compile this real quick. Oh yeah, go back to this. If you grabbed it right from my GitHub repo, there's going to be a couple to-dos in there. If you search for to-dos, it'll say things as such as add the execution API key here. That's found here in published execution API. It's found here. When you publish it, you get the current API ID. You'll find a section to put in client ID, client secret. You can use these ones. I don't care. Uh, if you're comfortable using a public API, um, that's fine. Or you can generate your own. So you just search for to-dos, and then you'll just paste those values in there as you. So that'll be the client ID, client secret, and also the API ID that you get when you publish it as execution API. So let's go to the command line real quick, and we'll compile this. So the decompiler is called DMD. So it's DMD compiled. So let's take a look. So there's the toDoc executable. So let's take a look at this real quick. So the toDoc has a couple different options, and you can read about them in the documentation. We're not really going over the features. I just want to show how you can just make a quick little app with execution API. But so, for example, you can create a new file. You can override files. You can specify file names. So let's just run this. But the first thing we need to do is let's just run it and see what happens. Aha! Guess what I forgot to do for my last. All right. So let's do this. toDoc, and I'm going to clear my token because I want you guys to see the process of how you generate OAuth tokens and the OAuth flow with these console applications. Doing it this way. So I'm going to clear my token. That's with the -c, and we're going to run it again. And this time it's going to look at my user space and see that there is no configuration file with a valid OAuth tokens. So it's going to give me the URL. It's going to say take this and paste this URL into a browser. So we can go to any browser. We're going to run that URL, and it's going to ask. You're going to see it's a pretty standard Google OAuth flow, and you're going to click allow. It's going to give you a code back. You're going to copy this and go back to your console. Console could be anywhere. So that's why we're doing it this way. Or you can write it down on paper and move it over. Who knows? And then you either type in or paste in that code that you got back from the OAuth flow in the browser. So I just pasted it in there with a Control V, hit enter, and since this tool is not the greatest, it didn't give you a little prompts, but as of right now, you're inside the tool, and good console tools, basically they do one small function. They take input, they process it, and they send it out. Do one task, do it well, and use standard in, standard out. So for example, right now it's looking at standard in. Since I didn't give it any input, it's just looking for standard in from the console. So I can say this is a document. This is an, I don't know, thing, a thing, who knows, whatever. And so now we're going to close this out. If you don't know if you're not up with the command line, Control D will close out the stream. And it'll tell you that it's going to write to a doc, tells you when it's done, and it gives you the document ID. So for example, you can go to your, let's go to Drive. Go to recent, and look, there's a new document from toDoc. This is a document. It is a ting. I guess probably what I typed in, and so that came up. So created a document and it put it right there. Um, let's go back to the console. So now you can do something like pipe data in, pipe data in. So so what we're gonna do is we'll pipe the the source code in from the source code into a new document. So we'll just writing toDoc done. So now we can come to our recent. You're going to see a new document's been created right here. What? Hold on. Maybe did I open the wrong one? Okay, yeah, I just opened up the wrong one. So here it is. So here's the source code. You can see that when I did a I did a cat, which is basically just print something out at the terminal, prints, and it gets, and then you use the pipe, and it sends it to your program to the toDoc, and it sends it all up. So you can do things like if you have logs, you need to write to you can do that. If you want to, anything that can do standard out in the console can be pushed now to a document. And for example, I chose the document service because there is no public document app or REST API. So the only way to automate Google Doc is through Google Apps Script. And so that's where this comes through. So you can see through a pretty simple console application and a very simple script, you can get some pretty cool workflows. And I just wanted to show that to you. And there's other options such as you can name files, you can open files, you can append files. Those are all different settings that you can look at. But it's a pretty cool tool, and you can do lots of things that you need to automate. Traditionally you don't write from the command line to a like a web service or something like that, but with the execution API, it makes it pretty simple. So I just want to show that to you real quick, and if you have any questions, hit me up in the Google Apps Script community on Google+, or right here through YouTube or anything like that. Thanks.